Hello there, my RPG lovers, and welcome to another video. Blades of Fire is a brand new action adventure that came out of nowhere.
Less drama, more action, come on!
A couple of days ago I published my first impressions video where I talked a little bit about the game, but now I'm going to give you a proper review. It's a shame that this game is only on Epic Store for PC, and I know a lot of people won't get it on PC because of that, but you can also get it for consoles as well.
I forgot. You're flesh and bone. You can't do that.
But before we start with the video, I want to give a huge shout out to my channel actually, because I'm getting really close to 100k subscribers and it will mean a lot to me if you subscribe right now if you haven't already. There is no doubt that Blades of Fire looks like an old school action adventure from PlayStation 3/Xbox 360 era. That's going to be a good and a bad thing, depending on who you ask. I personally love how this game looks in general. It reminds me a lot of Darksiders games, which I also loved. I managed to run it on 4K resolution on my PC, with the balance preset and DLSS on balance as well. I mentioned in my first impressions video that I had some frame drops in certain areas, but after I continue playing the game, it seems like it fixed itself. I've put a lot more hours in this game since then, and I can't remember the last time I had any frame drops. At first, I wasn't so sure about this artistic style and if I'm going to like it, because the game starts in a very generic fantasy forest. But as I continued playing and discovering new areas, I started to like the look of this game a lot. It has a vibrant color palette, but it's not overdone. It's a very clean look in general, and you'll always be able to see exactly what's going on the screen. I had more than a few moments where I just stopped and observed the environment around me. The game is full of these tiny particle effects, which gives it a very nice look in general. Blades of Fire doesn't have an amazing visual variety, but most major areas you're going to discover have a different look. What makes the overall look of the game even better is the level design itself, which is just amazing in general, but more about that in the gameplay section. The character models look decent, but certainly not amazing, even for this heavily stylized look of the game. The protagonist Aaron looks like a generic strong warrior that I would make in pretty much all RPGs I play, so I don't really care that there is no character customization in the game. There are only a handful of main characters you'll meet throughout the course of the main story, but all of them have a pretty unique and memorable look, especially when it comes to some bad guys.
Behind you!
And girls, as a matter of fact. Speaking of which, we also have our trusty sidekick named Etso, who looks like a fanboy.
Hello, little one.
All jokes aside, I would always prefer a similar artistic style to Blades of Fire over a game that's trying to be hyper-realistic, especially with the environments. Now let's talk about the story for a minute. Long time ago, the ancient race named the Forgers created mankind and provided them with the knowledge of using steel to create weapons. The queen of these lands is killing everyone who is trying to oppose her by turning steel into stone. The protagonist of the game, called Aaron, is gifted a sacred hammer that enables him to craft his own steel weapons in the Forge of the Gods. His main goal is to kill the queen. In the beginning of the game, you'll meet a kid called Etso who will help you with various things like puzzles, translating ancient runes, and he also records everything. You can send him to the camp and play the game without him, but you'll need him to progress in a lot of different areas.
Hey lad, any idea what this is?
Yes, this is a sign of a master forger.
The cutscenes and big story segments are few and far between, but when they actually happen, they are pretty good. The writing is decent for this kind of a game, but not great. There's nothing particularly wrong with it, but it's just not that interesting, to be honest. The voice acting is pretty good though.
We came across a small village ravaged by the Queen's troops.
Yes, and thanks to you and your enlightened companion, those troops are now entering my domain. Damn you both, and thank you very much.
I'm surprised that a master forger such as yourself has willfully ignored what's been happening outside of your own domain.
Don't judge me, youngster.
Overall, the story is just enough to keep you interested in progressing through the game, at least it was for me. This game is light on the story and very heavy on the gameplay, so let's start talking about it. The gameplay in Blades of Fire is much better than I thought it's going to be. It's one of those rare cases where the gameplay is much better than it looks from the gameplay videos. Before I started playing the game, I didn't expect much from the combat system. I thought it's going to be a very old school take on the action-adventure genre. However, it's almost nothing like that. This game has a directional combat system which allows you to target different enemy limbs. The targeting itself is very easy because all of your face buttons of the controller are used for different attacks. You don't even have to use the target lock system as long as you know which part of the body is weak, but it will take a while until you get to that point. And certain enemies will switch it up in the middle of the combat, so they basically force you to use different attacks all the time. There's no easier way to describe this, and I might make it sound very complicated, but it's actually quite simple. More importantly, it's fun and engaging, but the combat system definitely has a special learning curve. The combat system in Blades of Fire reminds me a little bit of the Surge 1 and 2, because of the similar way you could target limbs. And yes, you can also cut off enemy limbs as well, just like in the Surge. Overall, it's a pretty brutal and impactful combat system. It's not the most impactful or the best combat system out there, but it's pretty damn fun and definitely unique. Aaron has regular and strong attacks that you can simply do by holding the attack buttons. I tend to use the strong attacks in games a lot, which I also did in this game. Most basic enemies can be one-shotted with a proper weapon and a swing to the weak body part, and this remains true until the very end of the game, with the exception of bosses of course and some elite enemies. You're going to mow down a ton of enemies at once in a lot of situations, but you can also die easily if you let your guard down. It's not exactly punishing as some Souls-like games, so you won't die from just a handful of hits, at least not from the basic enemies. But the game is full of elite enemies, which can make short work of you. Then again, almost no one is immune to a few perfectly placed strong attacks with a big weapon. The weapon types you use in combat is very important. There are many different weapon types that you can use, but first you need to discover the blueprints. That can be done by simply killing enough enemies of the same type. There is slashing, piercing and smashing damage, and it's very important to have at least one weapon with each of these damage types. That's because you'll stumble upon enemies that will be completely immune to one of these damage types, and if it happens that you don't have an appropriate weapon, well, you can't do any damage. Even worse, you can break the weapon you're using or die and drop your weapon. Every weapon you drop upon death can be picked up on the same spot, even if you die again and drop another weapon, they never disappear. Even so, I think this feature only adds to the frustration for seemingly no reason at all. In my first impressions video, I said that this doesn't matter a lot, because you always have enough materials to craft another weapon, which will probably be even better than the one you're using. That's because you're constantly progressing and different zones on the map will drop new and improved materials for crafting. But I quickly changed my mind about this after I started dying a bit more as I progressed. Come to think of it, it makes sense from the story perspective because your weapons turn into stone upon death. And since the crafting system is such a huge feature as well, dropping weapons upon death is yet another reason to use the crafting mechanics. So from the story and lore perspective, it makes sense to have this feature in the game, but that doesn't mean it's fun, it's quite the opposite. I got used to it, I guess, so it didn't bother me that much, but it certainly changed the way how I fight some stronger enemies. It was like, oh, I really don't want to die here because I'll have to come back and pick up my weapon. The checkpoints are plentiful though, and you won't have to run back for long periods of time, but the vertical design of the map doesn't make this easier. This is not exactly like picking up souls in Souls-like games. Dropping the main weapon that you're using constantly is way different and way more annoying. especially because you might just lose the ability to deal any damage to enemies in your current area, which makes this even more frustrating. So you're pretty much forced to go back and try to pick up the weapon without dying, or go back to the forge and craft another one. I'm probably making a bigger deal out of this than it actually is, but the point still stands. It's annoying.
Whatever you need, your lordship.
Another similar, annoying thing that you have to do in some areas is getting a special rune for your weapons. This is done by finding a blue lady spirit who will bless your weapon with these runes. Without a proper rune, you won't be able to deal damage to some enemies, which is just stupid. It's like a time-wasting mechanic that you have to do when you forged a brand new weapon that's pretty much useless without a rune. Just like the weapon dropping thing, it's not terrible, but certainly annoying and a bit unnecessary. It's like the developers just try to include more features for the sake of including more features. Anyway, to go back to the damage types, I actually like this design philosophy. That's because it's not just a philosophy, it's good in practice as well. There are just enough enemy types that will require you to use weapons with different damage types. So you're forced to have at least a couple of totally different weapons in your inventory, and I think that's a good thing. I'm the type of a player who usually sticks to only one melee weapon type and one ranged weapon type in most games. But there are no ranged weapons in this game at all, it's all about the melee combats. I actually think this works in the game's favor, and that's one of the reasons why the combat is so good. Since you only have one type of combat to work on, it's much easier to polish it up and make it as good as possible. I was using some weapon types that I usually wouldn't in similar games, but I only had a positive experience because of this. That's because the combat feels quite different depending on the weapon type you're using. Not drastically different, because you still need the appropriate damage type and you need to hit the same weak spots. But the animations for all melee weapons and attacks in general feel quite different. There is something for everyone here, unless you only like the ranged combats. Tough luck. Bitch.
Oh no, I was tuning my lute.
It'll make you go blind.
The main story of the game will sometimes make you craft a unique weapon that you have to use, which is nice. But for the most part, you have total freedom to experiment with different weapons and the crafting system. Some weapons have multiple damage types, so you don't necessarily have to change weapons all the time. And how about this nice little detail: when you change the damage type, everyone casually flips the weapon to the other side. It's pretty cool. The boss fights in this game are good, but don't expect Souls-like bosses or anything like that. While these bosses have more than a few unique mechanics, they are certainly not trying to be your typical Souls-like boss fights. I mean, this game definitely has some Souls-like features, like managing your stamina system, bonfires or forges if you will, and a similar healing system with the flasks. An extremely vertical and interconnected level design as well, so I'm not blaming anyone for confusing this game for a Souls-like. The bosses have a very reasonable health bars with no crazy multiple phases, with some exceptions. That being said, they are still challenging enough and fun to fight. Just like the regular enemies, they also have body parts that you have to aim for, as well as the immunity to certain damage types. There's not a ton of boss fights in general, and some of them are a bit disappointing. But that didn't bother me a lot, because it's not all about boss fights in this game. The game itself is not that easy, but this will depend on the difficulty setting as well. I played on the hardest difficulty, and to be honest, I never found this game extremely hard, not even close. But I played a shit ton of similar games and much harder games in general. The controls are pretty responsive as well, if not a bit janky sometimes, but these are not high amounts of jank, trust me, I will know. The game can feel more punishing than hard, for the reasons I already talked about, like when you drop your weapon. Then we have the stamina system, which is very limiting, but you can quickly regenerate stamina by simply holding the block button. There is no leveling up system of any kind, it's all about the weapon crafting system. You can still increase your stamina and health by finding these special gems all across the map or by using different weapons. There is no armor system of any kind as well, which kinda sucks because I like the visual progression. But nope, it's all about melee weapons and crafting. Speaking of which, I don't remember the last time I played an RPG or an action adventure which puts such a great emphasis on the weapon stats and the way you craft your weapon. Well, that's a lie, because I played Kingdom Come 2 recently, which had something similar, but it's also completely different. Anyway, almost all of these little stats actually matter in combat, and they will affect your weapon in a major way. The length of the blade, stamina usage, and the sharpness level are the most important stats from my personal experience. For example, if you want to have more stamina in combat, you have to use specific materials and parts. The crafting minigame is pretty fun if you do it every now and then. You won't have to do it all the time, because the game remembers your last best attempts. Only when you discover a new weapon, you'll have to do this at least once. As for the minigame itself, you only need to keep these bars within the white line of the table, which is easier said than done. The number of stars you get indicate the number of times the weapon can be fixed upon breaking. And that's about it.
Oh, it's appalling.
There are more nuances in this system of course, but it's much simpler than it looks. All of the materials that you get from dead enemies and the environment have different quality levels, and this depends on the zone that you're currently in. The difficulty level also affects how many materials you need for repairing the weapon when it breaks, which is just stupid. I really don't see a reason to do this, it's just another small mechanic that makes the whole experience of the game worse. It makes the game more punishing, not hard. And last, but certainly not least, we have the level design. At first, I thought this is going to be a very linear game, but I couldn't be more wrong. It kinda starts off like that, but you'll quickly see how open the map in Blades of Fire actually is. Well, maybe open is not the best way to describe it, because you won't be able to enter all areas just like that. You first have to complete a zone, find a key or some special items in order to progress to a new zone on the map. The level design is extremely vertical, and I'm not using the term extremely loosely here. I loved exploring all the different zones in the map, and there is a ton of shortcuts and different passages to take. This game doesn't have any quest marks, and it won't show you what you need to do or where to go. While this can definitely cause some frustrations when exploring the map, I would always prefer this kind of exploration over a more guided experience. The only thing you can get is some hints from Atso and other NPCs, but these are usually very vague. I did get stuck more than a couple of times, which was definitely frustrating. However, like I already said, I would always prefer this kind of map design over a more hand-holding GPS type of a map. The game really doesn't tell you much, it's all up to you to explore and discover things by yourself. Again, even for someone like me, this was a bit frustrating every now and then. You have to go back and forth on some maps until you find a new passage for a new area. All of that frustration quickly goes away once you find what you're looking for, and I think this is the charm of such game design. These developers have some balls on them, I'll give them that, because not a lot of studios will even consider designing the game like this. You know, with little to no guidance.
It'll make you go blind.
These levels are much bigger than they seem on the map because of the vertical design. A lot of these optional areas will lead you to something to loot, like gems that improve your stamina and health, or some other items that increases some of your stats. These are like very basic skill trees, where you can improve things like the amount of health flasks you can carry, or something about crafting. The game feels very old school when it comes to this kind of exploration and the rewards you're going to pick up. But on the other side, you'll struggle to find old games with such a big, interconnected open world with zero loading screens. Yeah, you won't have any loading screens while exploring this map, which shouldn't be a huge surprise for a 2025 game. Even so, the lack of loading screens makes exploring the world a lot more immersive and impressive. The level design is certainly one of my most favorite things about this game. It's amazing, even though it can be frustrating sometimes because of the lack of directions. As for the sound and music, there are some cool soundtracks in the game for sure. The sound effects are good in general. There are some underwhelming sound effects, like the one for blocking for example, but for the most part they are good enough. And I already mentioned the very solid voice acting.
Don't you patronize me!
And that would conclude this review.
Whatever you need, your lordship.
I really enjoyed my time with Blades of Fire, despite some of the frustrating features and moments that I had. It's a shame that this game is only on Epic Store for PC, but I hope it will come out on Steam, maybe a year from now. It's also on consoles, but I didn't have the chance to try it out on Xbox or PlayStation yet. Anyway, tell me what you think about Blades of Fire in the comments below. Is the Epic Store a deal breaker for you, or maybe you want to try it out on the console? Let me know. I definitely think it's a sleeper hit of 2025.
Word of advice. Don't run.
Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more content like this. And if you want to go a step further, consider supporting your boy by becoming a YouTube channel member or a Patreon. Huge thanks to all my current supporters, and I'll see ya in the next one.